Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. On today's Another View Roundtable, we take the time to reflect on race relations in 2018. Have we made progress in bringing people together, or are we as far apart as ever? What is the responsibility of the African American community in improving our relationships with others? Plus, he's back, at least for today. Original Roundtable pundit Roger Chesley joins us to talk about his Leaving the Virginian-Pilot, some of his favorite columns, and the state of the newspaper industry today. Alvean Lyons, Pretlow, Allison Moore, and Roger Chesley with some great conversation on Another View. But first, today is our final day of our winter membership drive. Let's head over to Pledge Central and see how we're doing. And I think I'm talking to Scott and Sarah. Is that right?
At Pledge Friday, call in to hear their names on the radio.
Right.
Hello, Scott. Scott, are you there? Well, I tell you what, since they seem to be getting ready for us, let me go ahead and say this to the audience in terms of our pledging. So we had a $2,000 challenge, and last night I happened to be on the radio with Barry Graham, and we had a great time, and I threw out a challenge to Another View listeners then to say, why don't we go ahead and get our challenge out of the way? Let's do this early. And so last night we raised $2,500 against that $2,000. Yes. So we are very, very excited that we go into today's pledge with some money already on the table, but that does not let you off the hook. We need you to call and become a member of WHRV. The number is 1-800-940-7170, 1-800-940-7170. If Pledge Central is ready at this point, we can go back and chat with Scott and with Sarah McCammon.
Hey,
hi guys, how you doing?
We're fine, finally.
Okay, no problem. I just did a little tap dance. We're good.
We're just getting set up.
You're a professional, Barbara.
It's so good to hear you. But as I was telling the audience, we actually met our goal of matching a $2,000 match yesterday,
Awesome.
which is fabulous. However, we still want people to call in.
Absolutely.
Because I have a personal goal. I want to walk away with at least $6,000 before we leave this hour.
Okay.
So, folks, I need you to call 1-800-940-7170. Talk to me, Scott and Sarah.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. And, as you say, you've got an hourly goal, and we've still got, something like $37,000 left to raise this pledge drive. So while we may have met the last goal, we set these smaller goals, moment by moment, hour by hour, and we ask you, our listeners, to come alongside us and help us reach those goals and, keep this kind of programming that you rely on and WHRV and WHRO on the air. The number again is 1-800-940-7170. Again, I'm Sarah McCammon from NPR, and I'm here.
I'm Scott Duncan here. I'm on the board of NPR. I'm happy to be with you, Sarah, an NPR journalist based right here in Hampton Roads.
That's right.
Which is so cool.
It's so amazing. and so I'm sure we'll hear Sarah throughout the day here. We'll talk a little bit about the stuff you've been doing since you've been here. But it's incredible to think that that's what this station is about. It's about bringing top quality journalists to you to tell you what's going on in the world. It's about bringing a local programming that's top quality to you to tell you what's going on locally. And it's about the community, really. We're a community of listeners. This is a community station. We can't do it without community support. So please make that call, 800-940-7170. If you're listening to our voices now, you know the value of this programming. You listen to it probably every single day, and you know that you need it, that you rely on it, but you also need to know that it can't happen without your support.
That number again, 800-940-7170. You can also go to WHRV.org. Either way, it's pretty quick and easy. Mm-hmm. You can make that donation. You can become a sustaining member. We really encourage that. That's the way that works is you decide how much you want to give every month. You set up an auto pay just like you would with maybe your water bill or your heating bill or whatever it is. You probably won't even notice it month to month. It makes things easier for us, for you. There's less paperwork. It's more efficient. Or if you want to make a one-time donation, that's okay too. But again, it's WHRV.org or 800-940-7170.
Guys, I'd like to thank a couple of people who actually really helped us get over our goal yesterday because I did not get a chance to thank them on the air last night. And I want to thank Mr. Charles Smith and Ms. Sharon Smith of Williamsburg. They say they always listen to Another View. Thank you so very, very much. Ms. Allison Battle of Portsmouth, and Dr. John Kaiser and Mrs. Ruth Kaiser of Williamsburg also. And also from Virginia Fundraising Associates, my good friend Virginia Tum, and she gave us a shout out and helped us out also. So just want to say thank you to those donors and encourage the rest of you to also give and give generously if you can. 1-800-940-7170.
It only takes a minute or two to make that call. We have great volunteers waiting to take that call, or you can go to whrv.org and do it online. But that quick act of support that you will give will make a difference all year long and enable us to bring you this programming. So do it now. 800-940-7170. Make that pledge of support so we can keep this programming going.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much, guys. And we will talk with you a little bit later on in the show.
Thanks.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. Great conversation with the Another View Roundtable, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. But if you're just tuning in, let me encourage you to become a member of WHRV. This is our winter membership drive. If you love Another View, if you want to support Another View, we truly, truly appreciate it, and we need you to give us a call at 1-800-940-7170, 1-800-940-7170. Now, we had a $2,000 match, which we actually made and exceeded yesterday afternoon. So I promised our donor that if the phones keep ringing steadily, that we will not interrupt the rest of the program and you will get the roundtable in its entirety. So I need you to call 1-800-940-7170. And now let's meet our roundtable. First, joining us by phone, she's Virginia's favorite relationship expert and host of the super popular podcast Love Life, Ms. Alvean Lyons, who is playing nurse today, right?
I am. And as a relationship expert, I had to live by the principles I'm always preaching, that you don't have to choose between your passions and your people. There are ways to do both.
Absolutely.
So I'm here keeping an eye on my honey and joining my incredible favorite roundtable simultaneously.
Thank you so very much. We're so happy that you're here with us. And just so you know, folks, Matt, Alvian's husband, works in IT, and all of the entire office came down with the flu. So word to the wise with the Lysol and the sprays and the cleaning the keyboards. It's an ugly thing out there. Let me say that.
Take care of yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to call our next panelist the original OP because he's an original pundit. There you go, Roger. How you like that? He joined the AV Roundtable at the beginning when we were on television. And now he's a former columnist for the Virginian-Pilot. Welcome home, Roger Chesley.
Hello, Barbara. How are you?
I'm
Thanks
doing
for having
great.
me back.
Thank you. We are so happy you are here. Carol Pretlow is a professor of political science at Norfolk State University. How you doing, Carol?
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
You're happy because finals are over, huh?
Yay! I can do a dance.
And she's a mom, wife, comedian, and our millennial member, Ms. Allison Moore. How you doing?
Hello. Doing good.
Good. And we want to say a shout out to Don Hester, who had a death in the family. So we want to send our condolences, and she could not be with us today. But the rest of you are here, and we're going to keep going. And Alvean, actually, I want to throw something out to you because you are the relationship expert. When I was writing the introduction for Allison, because of the Me Too movement, I actually paused because I said she's a mom, wife, comedian, and our millennial member. Are we pushing this? And then it brought up the whole thought about the song, Baby It's Cold Outside. And so my question to you is, are we pushing some of this a little too far in terms of political correctness, or does all of this matter in terms of how we describe each other and how we consume pop culture in light of the Me Too movement? Which I know is a little
Well,
different from our topic, but I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying. And it is an interesting place for us to be in our nation right now in terms of our conversation and trying to make sure that we don't step on any social, cultural, gender, ethnic, economic landmines with the things that we
Good
say
Lord.
right now, of course.
That means stand still, right?
You know, like you just don't even want to move these days because you just don't know who you're going to offend. And the thing that I think we all have to examine is it so much an issue of what it is we say or why we're saying it? If we had a nation that cared a little bit more about the way we treated one another, in that sort of the Maya Angelou, you may forget what a person says, but you'll never forget how they make you feel, that the way that we make each other feel is creating an environment where we're having to press or inculcate language and rules because we don't care enough at the heart level. I think that if we cared differently at the heart level, people would actually give us a little bit more grace on making mistakes in how we might say something or saying things a little differently than what would be considered politically correct or ideal, because I know that what you're saying is coming from a place of love. I know that you care about me. I know that you're not interested in trying to hurt me, make me feel less than, marginalized. The list goes on and on. But because we're not so sure that those things are true, that those are our cultural, social truths, we're having to be super careful about virtually everything. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, that it's actually hindering the way that we communicate with each other because people are more worried about being politically correct than they are about being honest.
So,
and
Alice,
you can't heal if you're not honest.
So, Allison, when I introduced you that way, I mean, from a millennial perspective, did that bother you, or was it?
It's not. I didn't see the connection with the Me Too piece, so I'm going to need to go home and study that. But, however, I do find, for me, it's interesting that people always feel the need when they're introducing me to add that I'm a wife, that I'm a mother. It's as if it makes it better. I can be on a panel, and this isn't the first. He was a pundit. She's a professional from Norfolk State, but I'm a wife, a mother, and then a comedian. Or if I'm on stage,
I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But I mean,
people usually don't. When I'm on stage, it'll be comedian. Man, he's very funny. Man, he's very funny. He's very funny. This is the beautiful, smart comedian Allison Moore. So there's always, I find that people always feel like, let me help her or let me beef that up, because just being a comedian or just being a speaker is not enough.
Shame on you, Barbara.
See, there you go.
No, thanks, Barbara.
And I'll tell you where I was coming from when I was thinking of this, because I think that for as young as you are, these are things, to me it was let me tell you everything she's all about. But I get where you're coming from. Okay, thank you.
And people, they do that. And then I'll find, I used to try to defend it or try to add to it, and then I started to hide. Don't forget to add that I have a master's degree. And don't forget to add, she's like, man, I don't really care. Can you tell these jokes? I got this long list, and so it's fun, interesting.
Oh wow! All right, well then let's move on to the topic that we're supposed to be talking about today. But that's a lesson for me. I love that. Okay, so you could characterize 2018 as the year of the living while black. Okay, in quotes. There were several examples of police being called in on African Americans for doing normal life activities. 2 gentlemen in Starbucks arrested while waiting for their friend for a business meeting. Police called on the Yale campus, Yale student for taking a nap in the common room. Police called on African Americans barbecuing in a park in Oakland, California. Roseanne Barr's show canceled after she tweeted racist remarks. Women leaving an Airbnb. Roger, are we making progress or are we not?
Heck no. And, and as I've said before on the show, with the advent of social media and with everybody with a smartphone, you can videotape everything. It's kind of hard to know, okay, is this happening more, or are we just hearing about it more and the situations are fairly static and they're not increasing? However, some of these things just seem to be so outlandish, and I think a lot of it emanates from the character of the person who's in the White House and on where some people who might have had these feelings of bias, of racism, might not have wanted to express it in the past. Now they feel like they have the entitlement, the justification to do so. And I do think that that's a part of it. I mean, there was another incident where a guy was going into his own apartment building, I believe. And a woman comes to question him about why he's coming in and is trying to prevent him coming in and feels like she has to go up to the floor that he lives on. He had a pass key to get in. So, this is madness. And I do think, again, it's sort of part and parcel of the attitude and the hysteria that emanates from Donald Trump. And we can get better, but when you sent this out as a topic for discussion, I was like, well, that's an easy one to answer. No, race relations aren't better. We had a report that came out not too long ago just about hate crime reporting. It's not just race; it's also religion. It's also all of it. Ethnicity, and the whole attitude toward immigrants, and just building the wall and the treatment. Heck, we had a report of a 7-year-old child who died while in custody because dehydration and body temperature. And this is nuts. We should not be, as a nation, we should not be in this place.
Carol.
Yeah. It's almost like we've come full circle. We had this discussion in Norfolk State about a week ago, and I was relating some instances that had happened to me as a child. And obviously, I thought as I got more mature and got more education that things would improve. And now I'm right back to the same spot again. The words, the insinuations, the being careful when, and I have to admit, as I was talking about being nervous around police people, not because of their action at that moment, but because of this background noise that's there saying, oh, remember this, remember that, remember what happened to this person. So it's full circle. Full circle.
What about you, Alvean? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with my colleagues that we're revisiting something that we have seen before as a nation. But there are factors, as Roger pointed out, there are factors that may mean that we are seeing things more frequently, but not necessarily that they're happening more frequently. I 100% agree that leadership matters. That it's no different, quite frankly, the leadership of the nation is no different than a leadership of a family. If the parents are rude, obnoxious, inappropriate, degrading, disrespectful, the list goes on, then we're never surprised in education to see that the children behave the same way in school. So to watch what's happening inside of our nation is really a reflection in a lot of ways of what kind of leadership we have in our nation. It's creating a culture. But I don't know that I would say that we are exactly where we were before, because quite frankly, economically, we are in a totally different position as people of color in terms of what we could do and the influence we could have. I think what it really begs the question of is, what will we do this time around? Will we recalibrate in a way to ensure that the lessons that we are learning, the exposure that's happened because of this rock that has been flipped over and all the snakes came out, what will we do differently as a nation given the level of platforms that we do have, given the economic power that we do have? Are we at a point in our nation where we are serious enough as a people of color and those who are allies and supporters, because it is not just people of color who are completely aghast with what's happening. Everybody with a real conscience and a desire to do good is bothered by what they are seeing. So the question is, will we put our actions where our intentions are? If our intentions are for racial justice, social justice, gender justice, and the list goes on, if that's where our intentions are, will our actions be congruent with that? Will we stop shopping at certain places? Will we vote differently? Will we show up at the schools? Will we show up at the courthouses? Will we show up at City Hall? Where will we go? What will we do to say that I see myself as an American and I believe that these are our American values, and anything that's inconsistent with that, I am willing to do what it takes and inconvenience promised myself the way that it was done in the 50s and the 60s, to stay off of the buses, to not participate. I'll do what it takes to make it crystal clear that this will not happen in America. And the one thing that is bigger than black and white is green. And if we get serious economically about our decisions, you could best believe that all kinds of things would change the minute that we all disengage from what we believe to be inconsistent with those American values.
So, Allison, your group of citizens, the millennials, are supposed to be kind of the savior group. You all are all coming together. Are you, or are things? Are you seeing things differently than maybe when you were in high school or in college or growing up?
I'm at the top of the millennial group, so I'm 35.
Okay,
and to me, I don't see anything any different. I think that social media just allows us to see what's already in the hearts of people. But I'm from Hampton, born and raised. My mother is from Hampton, born and raised. So my mother was in Kecoughtan's second integrated class. So my mother was in segregation. My mother experienced, when I was growing up, let's go to Buckrow Beach. She was the one that could not go to the other half of the beach.
Wow.
So these types of things that we're seeing now, I'm not saying, wow, this is new, because I've never felt anything different. It's just, you can see it. And social media to me reminds me of, I remember when Three-Way came out, Three-Way on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's the ability to just tell more people the junk that you were already thinking and saying anyway. Once we had Three-Way in 7th grade, we was planning, did you get Three-Way? Let's all talk, like 7 of us on the phone, and able to just tell more people the gossip that we were doing on the one-on-one. And that's how I look at social media too. They're already feeling that way, but now we just get to see it more. So people are like, oh my God, this is just getting worse. I'm like, I don't really think so. I can go on the whole part of the beach.
Well, the NBC Survey Monkey poll found that we're barely talking about race. Okay, it said 51% of those polled said they often or sometimes talk with their friends and family about race relations, while 47% say they rarely or never have these types of discussions with friends and family. So, Roger, if we're not willing to talk about it, how are we going to change it?
Well, it's going to be very difficult, and I'm not surprised. I don't always believe the Survey Monkey style. I'm not exactly sure if that's the most scientifically rigorous. However,
it was NBC too. But anyway,
however, I'm not surprised by the findings because of the fact that if you want to maintain at least some kindness, some civility when talking to other people, you probably are going to avoid those things that are most stressful, or are going to be most antagonistic. Look, you want to be able to talk to your neighbors. You want to be able to talk to your friends. You want to talk to the family members who might have voted for somebody else in the most recent election. And if you're going to do that, you're going to try to stray away. You're going to try to stay away from those things that are going to bring conflict. So I'm not surprised about it. I think the way that we perhaps do a little bit better is in our small group interactions. And this might sound a contradiction from what I just said, but, when things are important and when things really have to be discussed, to try to say, hey, I'm not criticizing you, but this is the way that I feel about this. This is the way that I see it. And I think one of the good things about the videos of so many of these incidents that at one time, people would say, "Oh, I don't believe that happened. I can't believe that was the result." You're lying about what happened, and the instances of where police have shot or beaten individuals where it seemed way over the line for doing it, and usually the people who have been on the receiving end have been black and brown. I think that has maybe in much the same way that the beating at the Edmund Pettus Bridge told the nation, this is what's really happening down south, that we are seeing now. People aren't making this up. This is what's happening. This is why black folks feel so conflicted or antagonistic to the police in so many communities. And yes, are people not always doing what they should be? Correct. However, why is the treatment afforded to some people so much harsher than somebody else.
Than to others. So, Allison, I'm sorry, Alvean, one of the things that we talk about a lot when we do our Race Let's Talk About It conversations in the community is that we feel like we're talking to the choir. So how do we get the other voices together so that we can start to have some meaningful conversation to try to move the dial?
I saw something very interesting recently. I was watching, for those of you who may be familiar with the newest things that are coming up on social media, Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith, right? And she recently had Ellen Pompeo on to talk about the chasm that exists between women of color and white women, and that there is this distrust that seems to exist between us just across the board. And Ellen pointed out that she said, most of my black friends have white female friends, but most of my white female friends do not have black female friends. And it's very interesting to me the way in which they allow for, and she was referencing white women, the way in which we allow for this exclusion, so to speak, of women of color, to not have to hear those voices, those opinions, those this, that, and the other, and perfectly happy to maintain this homogenous social environment. And as the conversation went on, all I could think to myself is that I think is where a lot of our problem rests in terms of women, that we as women are the social and moral womb of America. And what we're allowing to be incubated in our wombs are literally helping to grow division. If we're not willing to have our uncomfortable conversations, the men are not going to follow that. And I really believe fundamentally women have more power than we give ourselves credit for, and particularly married women. Because let me tell you what, if your husband is acting up bad enough, and I'm not normally one to suggest such things, but just go with me here for a second. There are certain kinds of boycotts of privileges and benefits.
Wait now.
that one can participate in. That if we as women nationally decided that we don't like how our men are treating women, and until said legislation, said policy, said such and such is handled, there will be no benefits package up over here.
Sounds like Chirac, doesn't it?
I guarantee you stuff would get passed real quick. So, I'm just saying that we women, and generally, in marriage and relationship stuff, I try not to push that stuff, but I'm just saying, we really can influence more than we really let on sometimes.
Well, but the other side of that, too, is that there seems to be this idea of, for some people, this couldn't possibly happen to me. So therefore, it's your problem. It's not my problem. And so they won't push for their husbands to make these changes if they happen to be, in those positions to make the changes, because it doesn't affect them.
That's what the problem is. That's the problem. That's what I'm saying. That if we're going to talk about who needs to be in a conversation, black women and white women need to be in a conversation because white women made it possible for the president to be president right now. Black women ensured that Roy Moore did not end up getting that seat. It was women who were making the decision on the leadership of their states, the leaderships of their cities, and ultimately the leadership of our nation. We have way more power than we realize that we have. But if we're not on the same team, if black women and white women don't get on the same team in terms of what we want for our babies, what we want for our sons, what we want for our husbands, what we want for our brothers, our fathers, if we don't get on the same page, and then ultimately what we want for each other, I don't think we're going to see that much change, because we nurture our nation. And if it's not an ethical, moral, social problem for us, then things aren't the needle will not move. And I'm just really thrilled about how many women are getting in the fray in terms of politically and socially. Please know that I'm thrilled about it. But our unity has to be more than just sound bites and live mics. It has to be the conversations that we have uncomfortably, sister to sister. Let's talk about the fact that, girl, I don't believe this, and I struggle with that. And how is it possible that this could be the case? And let's get uncomfortable together. But it doesn't seem that that's socially appropriate in white female culture a lot of times, per Ellen's sharing, Ellen Pompeo sharing
Sharing her
that
information
conversation
on the
Red
show.
Table Talk.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, Roger, hang on just one second. If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable about racial progress in America with relationship expert Alvean Lyons, journalist Roger Chesley, NSU professor of political science Carol Pretlow, and comedian Allison Moore. I'm Barbara Ham Lee, and you're listening to Another View. Let's head over to Pledge Central. Apparently, the phones are not ringing, so we're going to have to take a break, and I'm going to need you guys' help. I'm going to need the help of Scott Duncan and Sarah McCammond to help me to get these phones ringing. 800-940-7170. Hey, guys. How's it going?
Hey.
Going all right. We want to get those phones ringing, though.
They're going to ring. Especially if somebody calls right now. Give you the number. How about that? That's how we make it easy. 800-940-7170. Everybody who's listening knows the value of Another View and all the other amazing WHRV programming. What about the value of all the NPR programming, for which my colleague Sarah McCammon is a journalist and a reporter? You know how valuable that is. You need to support it. We can only bring that programming to you if we have our community's support. Whatever level you can do is what we need. Every amount helps. 800-940-7170.
And I caught the tail end of your conversation there. It sounds like we're talking about some difficult and important conversations that need to happen in America and in our community. And, you know, public radio is one of the places that those conversations happen. We exist in large part to provide a forum for thoughtful, civil, and sometimes difficult conversations. You know, you might turn on WHRV and NPR and hear things that make you uncomfortable or that challenge your thinking or that maybe raise questions, but also answer questions. And that, I think, is why so many people love public radio, because it's a place you can go and sort of grapple with the big important issues and questions of our time, but in a way that is respectful and thoughtful and aimed at being productive. And I think we all believe that we need more of that right now in our country. And that's why we ask you to take just a moment out of your Friday to call 800-940-7170 or visit WHRV.org. No contribution is too small. Whatever, you know, if your students say and you just want to make a small contribution that fits in your budget, that's okay too. It's really important that we all come together and participate in whatever way we're able to. And you get to decide. Visit WHRV.org and make that pledge.
Sarah, you know, as a journalist covering these stories, the news is coming faster and more furious than ever before. It seems to me like there's a month's worth of stories in a week now, and a year's worth in a month. It's going faster, which means even more do we need to know what the facts are, what's going on. But we also need to be able to get the depth behind it that only NPR and WHRV brings. We need to understand all the complicated aspects of these issues in order to deepen our understanding of what's going on and make us more informed. That's what this station does for us. It does it every day, and it does it with the support of its listeners. We're not national. I think Scott Simon says this. We're not national commercial radio. We're not national government radio. We're national public radio. Public is our listeners. And you guys know, you listen to it every day. If you're hearing me now, it means you probably listen to Barbara every day at this time. You know how important it is to your life. Take that next step if you haven't done it already. 800-940-7170. We have a great group of volunteers who are now very busy out there, I can tell.
That's great. Thank you.
But they're waiting for you. They're ready for you. That call will take you just a few minutes. Whatever level, as Sarah said, you can manage will make a difference. But make that call or go online, WHRV.org. We need your support.
And it's really true what you say, Scott. News is coming so fast. And a lot of what we do as journalists, you know, before we ever get on the radio and come to you with a story or a conversation, a lot of it is vetting, fact-checking, talking to many, many sources. You know, for every story that I do on NPR, sometimes I talk to dozens of people to either get the idea, to figure out what's happening, you know, what's new, what's important to watch, to understand the full context. I mean, there is so much research and preparation that goes into it. I think you hear that in the stories that my colleagues do. And that takes time and resources and money. And it is so important to have trustworthy, reliable, careful, thoughtful journalism in this day day and age. You can be a part of that with your call to 1-800-940-7170 or your visit to whrv.org.
Well, I tell you, I was going to tell you guys, my heart is warm because I hear those phones ringing.
You hear
That's
it.
a wonderful thing.
They're going because people get it.
Thank you to my listeners. Absolutely.
Yeah, people get it.
We want you to pledge. We want you to support Another View and all of the programming that we do here at WHRV because it is so very, very important. That number again is 1-800-940-7170. Only takes a couple of seconds to make your pledge of support, and we really do thank you. And I'll check back in with you guys before the end of the show to see how we're doing, okay?
It's great, Barbara.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank
Alrighty,
you.
thank you so very much. We appreciate it. Back to you now, Mr. Roger.
Yeah, I just wanted to the whole point we were making about race relations, and if the only time that you see somebody who looks different from you is at work, which is often yes, you have relationships there, but they're often, I say, somewhat surface. They're not. Yeah. They don't always go deep. If you don't socialize with people who don't look like you or who are from another religion or who are from another gender orientation, if you do not go to church, which is often one of the most segregated places, and everybody there looks just like you, well, you're not really getting deep. You're not really treating people who are not like you as anything more than caricatures and stereotypes. And that's some of the places that where some of this breaking down and some of this reaching out occurs. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true regardless of the time, regardless of the era. Of course, so many neighborhoods in the past we've segregated. We didn't necessarily have that as an option, but that's
we do now.
And that's really where some of these this tough kind of conversations have to take place.
Allison, what are you teaching your children? Do they ask you about race?
They're in a transition of watching me because I'm transitioning. So my son is 9th grade, my daughter's in 8th grade, and in the beginning I was very, we're all one. I was very washed, and now that I'm like, oh wait, I think I've been fed some lies around here. I've been feeling the pressure. I'm like, Mama gonna take back all that stuff she was saying. You are black, okay? And I thought we was over it. We're not over it. It's gonna be hard for you. So let's be real. So I'm trying to mature, and then I'm trying not to dump my pain on them, my frustrations. My dad got to work so hard, and I'm still here. Okay, forget everything I told you. I'm trying to figure it out. I need a mentor if there's any mama mentors.
But you know what? You bring a really good point because, and that is something that African American parents, I think, face a lot because you don't. While you're trying not to, as you say, dump your pain on your kids, but at the same time, there are conversations we have to have with our children. The talk, about how to deal with police, as an example. There are conversations that other communities probably don't have to. Well, they don't have to, and probably don't have with their kids. And so, sometimes we're accused. Why don't you stop talking about it?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
I hear that a lot. Why don't you stop talking about it? But we can't stop talking about it because it hasn't changed.
And it's a real place, especially as I'm putting together like my content for, let's say, stand up. At first I said I don't want to be the typical black. They're going to think, oh, here we go with the race jokes, but I'm like, but this is kind of real. The other day I got pulled over because I had a decal expiration situation. I missed it, and I was scared to death. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Wow. And that was a real thing. But then it's like you don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's a real thing. And where do you find the middle?
Yeah. Let's talk to Kimberly from Williamsburg. Hi, Kimberly, you're on the air.
Hi. So nice to be here.
Hey, Kimberly.
I just wanted to say that I've been involved in a few political campaigns. I was very involved in the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. And, my personal experience is just that things do seem to be slipping backwards as far as race relations go. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's this huge rift and dichotomy between black people and white people out of this fear from white people that, I feel like they think the pendulum is going to switch and suddenly they're not going to be in power anymore, and that scares them. I think it's ridiculous, first of all, because I don't even know if that much of a pendulum shift is feasible, but also just the fact that they feel like that feels like you should then have to say, yes, there is a difference between us and Black people, and therefore we should fix that, because how is that right?
Okay, I'm going to let the group respond to you. Roger, you want to take that on?
I'm not exactly sure. The fears, I mean, look at where Native Americans and African Americans have been so long in this nation in terms of being on the bottom, and by law or practice, we had to stay there for so long. So if you have fear, maybe the problem is the history of this nation and the way we treated one another for so long, and how the majority in this country now is realizing, well, we're not going to be the majority anymore.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we're going to, people of goodwill are going to use their newfound power as a way to subjugate others. I think a lot of us realize that's not the right way to go. So a better way is, what is the best way to treat one another? What is the most just? What is fair? What is equitable? And I think so much of this country's history, it has been one that has not been equitable. And if you understand that, good. And let's try to do something about it.
Kimberly, thanks so much for the call.
Thanks,
Carol.
Kim.
Yeah, this is difficult because I think what happens between parents and children, we want them to be objective and open, and we don't want to impose our pain on them. And so because we are trying to do that, we are a little too protective. Then when it gets to the point that we are in a more interracial or integrated situation, unfortunately, we have a group of students maybe who are like, well, what are they talking about? I don't understand what's going on here. On the other side of it, you have people who come into the Black community who are misinterpreting our pain and seeing it as reverse prejudice. So it's almost like you're in this situation that you can't win.
Alvean, I know you come from the United Nations. The rainbow in terms of your family. But I'm just curious as to how your family as a whole deals with race.
It's a really interesting thing. See, so when I grew up as we were the only African American family, quote unquote, and just to be clear, we were sort of a culture inside of a culture because my parents are both West Indian. So I'm first generation American. So there was already a little bit of a difference in the way that we lived socially inside of my house. It was the West Indies in my house. It was America when you stepped outside. And then, so I was never quite Black enough for my Black friends, but I was always too Black for my white friends. So it was a very interesting space that I grew up in. And then, as you referenced, we have a very multicultural family too. Yes. So there were layers on top of layers on top of layers. But one of the things that was interesting is when I grew up, I didn't like the black and white thing. I didn't even like the terminology. And Barbara, right. I am famous for saying chocolate and vanilla.
Yes, you drive my listeners crazy with that. Yes, you do.
I'm famous for it because I really believe that if we train children to see brown as delicious and dessert, and brown children to see white as vanilla, which is quite lovely, and icing. So, like, if we thought about each other and the deliciousness of the flavors we brought to this world, what would that mean? And I referenced a long time ago that I used to babysit 2 children that were white. And I taught them that very thing. It was my own little social experiment when I was 14. And both of them ended up dating Black men. Now, I don't know how their parents were thrilled about that later on. But but they didn't have that thing because brown was beautiful and it was delicious. So they didn't see brown as a problem. So I tried that with my own children for years. And quite frankly, it worked very well in our household. We would never use black and white. But as they got older and started to have their own social experiences that were very clearly divided along racial lines, we were forced to have certain kinds of conversations that we didn't want to have to, make part of their early upbringing. And you struggle as a parent, and I used to be a parent educator, and you struggle as a parent trying not to poison your children with their pain, but you don't want them to be completely blinded by their privileges either. Mm-hmm. And when you're raising a son, I have a black son, and me not teaching him those things has the potential for it to cost him his safety and God forbid, even his life. Mm-hmm. So there's this thing that I sometimes resent as a parent, that I don't get to allow my children, as a black mother, I didn't get to allow my children to just have the innocence of childhood. I had to steal that from them in order to save them in some way. And I resent that sometimes. Like my white girlfriends don't have to have those conversations with their children. It never comes up. So you kind of wish as a mom, why can't my kids just be kids without having to think about their blackness as their lead leg? Couldn't they just think about their gifting, their talents, their personalities instead? But unfortunately, we don't live in a world that allows for that. And I'll say one other thing and then I'll shut up. We live in a world that the President Obama is half white. We don't refer to him as the first half-white president in America. We refer to him as the first black president in America. And he was raised by a white mother and white grandparents. But we are so obsessed with blackness being an issue in America that we will erase the love of his mother and his grandparents from his life because your brown skin puts you in that box. And that, for me, just really, it's disheartening that love doesn't even matter. My mom doesn't even matter. My grandparents are invisible, all because my skin makes them absolutely obsolete. So America has an obsession with brownness, and too often it's brownness associated with criminalization. Like we just criminalize it so quickly. Black children are perceived as older than they really are. Their innocence robbed. I mean, it's disheartening as a parent who wants to be able to just enjoy the beauty of the diversity of our culture and think it's a good thing.
I think that this will be a great topic for us to have further down the line in terms of black parenting and what that really means. Because I think a lot of people who are not African American and don't understand what black children go through on a daily basis, what black people period go through on a daily basis, the struggle of trying to balance that is really critical. But I'm going to turn the conversation, because I got to spend some time talking to Roger. Because Roger has made a major shift. Yes, we must. We must talk to Roger.
I think a lot about you too, Carol.
But Roger, you are now retired.
Not retired.
Okay. What do you want to call it?
I'm not working at the pilot anymore, but I'm not retired.
Okay, so
I can't get Social Security just yet.
So you wrote your last column last week. And, really, some people are really snarky on the comments thing.
I tend not to read, and I often never did read the columns at the bottom of the column because, first of all, they didn't really add anything to what I've already written. And then secondly, a lot of it is people trolling or just throwing barbs. And can you imagine if we did the same thing to the people who did certain jobs? Okay, so you complain about me as a columnist. Why don't I go to your workplace? And I'm going to pick out everything that you do wrong. The person who drives a bus. Wow. Okay, you went across the line there. Or the person who is a welder. So I get it. I put myself out in the public. I understand this is part of the job. But boy, some people are just nasty for nasty's sake.
Real. Okay, so 18 years.
18
you
years
gave
at the
your
pilot.
opinion at the pilot, and you weren't a columnist the entire time there, or were you?
I was an editorial writer and a weekly columnist when I was on the editorial page, and then I became a 3 times a week Metro columnist in 2010.
Okay, and so how are you feeling about not being there?
It's a little strange. I mean, it's been a long time since I haven't had a full-time
You actually got a chance
job.
to sleep in, huh?
A couple of days. A couple of days. But, some people, such as Lisa Godley, called me as soon as the column went, can you come on the show next week?
Absolutely.
So it's been kind of a hectic first week not being there. But it's a little different. I'm not exactly sure what the future is going to hold. I hope it has something to do with either leadership or research or trying to make this region better or trying to make a nonprofit better. I think I am equipped with some of the contacts I've made over the years and some of the issues that I do know something about that hopefully I can be of value to somebody. We'll see if that's really the case or not.
Have you thought of writing your memoirs?
So many authors write memoirs, and I think, quite frankly, that some things aren't just that interesting. And I think really we should be, what are certain issues or certain topics that might have some value that really would be beneficial to people who read it. I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm sure that I've had a great life and I've had wonderful parents. All 6 of their children went to Howard University, got bachelor's degrees from Howard, and some of us went on and got further degrees, and all that's nice. But if I do something, I think I would try to do something that might be a little bit broader than that.
So, Roger, so you wrote about a variety of things.
Yes, I did.
You wrote your columns ran the gamut. Did anyone ever accuse you of only writing from a black male perspective?
All the time. I was called racist more than once in emails and phone calls when I wrote about race. And I think the thing that always kind of amused me was that if you looked at the topics of the columns over the years, you would probably see that was a pretty small fraction of the columns that I did. And I think certain people would have wished I wrote like a white female conservative. But that was Gary Doherty when she was there. And so if you're going to get a black male liberal, you should expect that he's going to see certain issues from that point. If you're going to see somebody who went to a mostly white high school, but then went to a nearly all black college, who had a father who was a police officer, so very cognizant of some of the issues that police officers dealt with, a mother who was a file clerk, siblings who were high achieving, well, I'm going to have a certain perspective, and you might not believe that, but I certainly do, and I would have been a liar to myself, my own background, if I had not brought that to the columns that I wrote. I think certain people didn't like to be told what some of the issues were really about in this country, and didn't really want to accept the fact that everything's not hunky-dory either sometimes.
So now let me reverse that, because this is something that I get a lot too. Before someone saw your picture, did they think...
some people thought I was white.
Yeah, I was going to say,
too.
did they think that you were white? Yeah.
Yeah, there were some people that said, he's not a black columnist, he's a white columnist. And I thought that was pretty cute too. But it really is interesting. And I think there were some African Americans who actually thought that sometimes when they called. And I was like, boy, I don't know what they're looking at, but I guess it's the skin color.
So what does this mean? I mean, you weren't the only columnist. There were 2 others, the reporters and columnists who left.
Right, but I was the last.
But you were the last Metro columnist. So what does this mean for the newspaper industry? I mean,
I think, and I'm somewhat constrained.
Sure, I know. But that's why I want to talk about it in general. Right.
But in general, this has been a very distressing time for the industry as a whole. And, I went back and looked. Apparently 2000 was the year when we had the most number of journalists in newsrooms at newspapers across the country. And it's really, the numbers have just gone down dramatically since then. Newspaper employment apparently has fallen by more than 60% since 2000. And so what you're talking about is a lot of journalists who, hone their craft, especially at daily newspapers across the country, outside the big cities, because you still have the New York Times and the Washington Post. I mean, they're going to still draw a lot of people. It's those communities. Forget even about the race of the reporters right now.
Right.
We're talking about
just reporters, period.
Right. We're talking about city councils that might not be getting the type of scrutiny they should be. School boards, businesses, state organizations. And that really, I think, is the danger to communities across the country, because let's face it, if you can get away with something, some people will do that. Not everybody has a straight moral compass. Not everybody is going to follow the law or not accept bribes or do things that they shouldn't be doing. And when you have fewer watchdogs out there, that's going to be a chance for some people to mess up the system. Even when we were at our greatest, levels of newsrooms, you still had people who were doing things they shouldn't have been. So I think that's the problem. I think that's the danger that we're seeing in places around the country.
So, and we got about like 2 minutes, so I probably shouldn't even throw this question out, but I'm going to anyway. So, do you think that citizen journalism, advocacy journalism, will take the place of "quote unquote" professional journalists?
I do not, and I think that there's somewhat of a danger in that. You need to have those organizations that are going to tell you this is what the facts are, not necessarily this is what I think should happen, but this is what the facts are, and then let people come to their conclusions. Of course, you can still have advocates who say we should have clean water, we should have fewer people in prisons, we should have alternatives to the way that we treat the mentally ill. But you also want somebody who can, a trusted source that can say, this is what the facts are, and this is what we should, at least look at what the situation is.
So you came up as a reporter and became a columnist.
Reporter and copy editor.
Right. Okay. So do all the other columnists in general approach their columns from a reporter's perspective? In other
Not
words,
necessarily.
You did a lot of research,
Right.
and as if you were reporting the story before
Right.
you made your
Not
decisions.
necessarily. And I think that's one of the complaints I have about some of the 24-hour newscasts, are that there's so much opinion as opposed to, well, tell me something new. What was the reporting? What facts? What developments did you come up with? Right. And that's, if we're just having shout fest all the time, it's not really very helpful.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay, so Roger Chesley, he's out there. He's looking for a job, y'all. No, I'm teasing.
No, you can say that.
He's looking for a job. But you are going to stay in Hampton Roads?
Oh, yes. We're
okay,
the boss is here. My mother-in-law lives here, and then one of my children is still at home. So I'm not going anywhere anytime soon unless I get evicted. So.
Oh, gosh. Well, let me tell you, Roundtable, I can't believe it. We are out of time. We got to check back and see how we're doing in terms of pledge and all that. But thank you so much. Happy holidays to each of you.
Thank you.
And Alvean,
you.
please give our best to Matt and tell him that we hope he feels better and that things go well for him. And don't you get sick. Okay?
Absolutely. Not on the schedule.
Okay. And as always, the Another View crew is so very grateful for your support. Yes. And it's still not too late to pick up the phone and become a member and join our family of loyal listeners. The phone number is 1-800-940-7170. Or you can go to whrv.org and make your pledge of support online. Every dollar you give pays for the programming you've come to expect on WHRV FM. So on behalf of producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Todd Washburn, and myself, we say thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to Lindsay and Stephanie Flint from Gloucester Point. They made a pledge of support to us and said they're doing it for me because I'm always so pleasant here on the radio. That is so sweet. Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And I hope everyone else will join in and become a member. We truly are a family here. Next week on Another View, holiday entertainment from professional storytellers Laquita and Corey Staton of Audubon Edutainment. They're going to tell stories next week, y'all. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Thanks to Jonah Grinkowitz for sitting in while Lisa Godley takes some time off. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Kamaria Mason and Grace Douglas answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. It's not too late to come in as a member 1-800-940-7170 or WHRV.org. We raised $5,556. Yes! Thank you so very much for listening to Another View.